Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. It is time to start looking ahead to 2023. Kaylee Filio is here from PartsEdge with a panel of leaders. Kaylee, welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Great. I'm excited about your topic. I've seen some of the talking points. Very timely, and you got some great leaders with you. So if it's okay, I'm going to step out of the way, Kaylee, and let you take the show from here.
Yes, thank you. All right, let's get started with everyone just doing a quick introduction to who you are, where you're at, so everyone can get to know you. And we'll start with Scott.
Scott Traub. I'm the corporate parts director with Modern Automotive. We're out of North Carolina. We've got 18 dealerships, a parts warehouse, and three collision centers that we run. And I'm really happy to be with you guys today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Or thanks for joining. All right, it's one of those days. Holden.
Holden Scott, Fixed Ops Director at Regal Nissan in Roswell, Georgia. I'm one rooftop with service, parts, and collision center.
And Mike?
Hello, my name is Mike Walden with the Hansel Auto Group. We have 8 rooftops out here in sunny California. If you have any warm and wet weather, send it our way. We'll take it. And we have 1 collision center. So, Scott, I got to talk to you about your additional collision centers. Big opportunity.
Yep.
And maybe we'll get into that. And then Justin.
Justin Aiken, dealer principal of All-Star Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram in St. Louis, Missouri.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. So today we're going to talk about parts management. And I want to start with talking about just historically how parts management has been and where there are opportunities for parts departments right now. So Scott, why don't you start with just, you've been in the business a while. How has the parts management role changed over the years?
Well, I think the understanding of the contribution that parts makes to the dealership is what is maybe changed the most. Not so much the job, but just the contribution and the importance of a smooth running parts department, the impact it has on every other department in the store. So we certainly recognize that. Our group is set up with a corporate director over each business segment. So there's a used car director, parts director, service director, and so on. And we moved to that role as our group grew. And interestingly enough, our owners recognized that importance of parts, and the parts director was the second director added to the group. So they understood from the get-go the importance of the parts operation.
That's awesome. I've been with PartsEdge for about 9 years, and I've seen this transition the last, 4 or 5 years where dealers are getting more involved in their parts departments and really seeing the opportunity there. So I think that's great that you guys have an actual parts director overall, the parts departments. Holden, you came from parts, right? You were a parts manager, and now you're a fixed ops director. How has that changed over time from when you were a parts manager?
Well, I think one of the first things is my parts manager now has a window in his office, which is something I did not have that I hated. I think the parts manager always was kind of like the guy in the hole. I've always made the jokes that, dealer principals and EMs and all that, they don't like fixed ops. It's oily, it's loud. They don't like parts because it's dusty and they don't know what's going on. But you're starting to see that kind of change because now all of a sudden service and parts are starting to rise on that financial statement every month. And it's become a very huge part of the dealership and something that dealerships have had to really rely on over the past 18 to 24 months. So I think at least where I am, I'm starting to see, more questions being asked, more people visiting the parts department and the service department because it is important. And I think that's something that we all need to capitalize on. And it's one thing I know I've been trying to take advantage of is, making those improvements that we need to make, kind of demanding some of those repairs, some of those investments of capital, because right now fixed ops is, carrying the dealership for a lot of the country right now. So it's very important.
Yeah. And so that kind of leads me to my next topic of what are some things that you guys are doing in your parts department that you think that no one else is really thinking about? What's setting you guys apart? And I'll go to Mike Weldon.
Well, we've kind of revamped the entire business. It used to be variable and fixed. We've trying to eliminate that language and bring the company together as one, because everybody has to support everybody in order to be successful. And we try to get past the old stereotype that it's the back end of the business, front end of the business. And when you do that, you start bringing the various segments together. You get people to start interacting differently than they have in the past. People aren't defensive of their own positions anymore. They know what the end resolve is and what we need to do to get there. So the conversations are much easier to have, and the buy-in is greater because the dividends that everybody receives off of it, everybody benefits from everybody working together. And it hasn't always been that way. So it's kind of a nice trend that we're transitioning through. We're not there 100%, but we're a lot further along than we were in years past, where everybody held their ground and didn't communicate. You know, a parts manager was the quiet guy, the service manager was the loud guy, and the variable was the guys that always made it tough on the parts guy and the service guy. So that's why they didn't get along. So we made that go away.
That's great. And what about you, Justin? Are there any opportunities that you guys are taking that you don't think other dealerships are looking at?
Well, one of the things we've done when I started, there was the parts department. That was it. It was really viewed as just one department. And now we spread it out into like 3 departments within one. We have the retail, the wholesale, and online. And so we truly have a online parts manager, a wholesale parts manager, and then an overall parts manager. And each one of them is really tasked with growing the business and really trying to look forward 5-10 years as to where we want that business to be. And I'm really trying to get them to, especially the overall parts manager, not work in the business and spend more time working on the business,
right,
and the growth of the business.
Yeah, I love that, because that kind of one of the questions I was going to ask was, there's always this expectation that parts managers kind of have to just do it all, and they're expected to know how to do everything. And I love how you broke it out into different departments, because that's something we always talk about is you're either in wholesale or you're not. You're either in online or you're not. Like, you got to separate it and treat it like separate departments.
You really do.
Yeah. And Scott, you're online too, right?
Yep. Yeah, we're online. Been doing online business for quite some time, and similar to Justin, we break that out also. We have a wholesale parts manager. He does run our e-commerce team, but it's a separate team that handles that. And then, you know, of course, the folks that are taking care of the dealership. But you know, one of the things that we do that I think is a little different than maybe most parts departments is we try and run our parts department similarly to the way you run a sales department. You know, my parts managers are truly parts managers, but I also want them to think like a sales manager. Since point, what are we doing each day to grow the business? What are we doing that is a sales related task versus a parts management task? Yes, they have to do both, but you know, we run our parts departments quite a bit. It's very similar to the way you would run a sales team in the showroom, right? So you know, we huddle every single morning, 15 minutes before we start the day. We talk about what went well the day before, how we're trending towards our forecast, recognize any great achievements from the day before, and talk about where we maybe had some opportunities and what we can do better today. So you know, that's stuff that you're used to seeing happen on a showroom floor with a group of salespeople, but not necessarily with a group of parts people. So, and it's been amazing since we started to really work on that, how the mentality of the management team has changed and what they do spend their day focused on today.
And what do you think are some of the things that they're focused on more now that you guys are doing those?
Well, I mean, so they're looking at what's driving their business. They're reviewing customer performance. They're looking at They're looking at where, whether a customer is buying every brand from us or they're just buying one brand, and they're, and how do we get the rest of the brands on board? And a lot of times it's just a conversation. So they're spending time concentrating on those opportunities. They're looking for ways that we can better serve the service department. That we can keep those techs in their bay and not have them standing at the parts counter waiting for parts. So they're all activities that are sales related, revenue generating activities that traditionally the parts manager wasn't very involved in.
That's very true. I think that's great that you guys is anyone else doing that kind of thing with their
We
careers?
are. I realize that too many of our parts, the guys taking those incoming wholesale orders or even our online parts department, they didn't view themselves as salespeople. They viewed themselves, I thought, more as order takers.
Right.
And so we put these huge, 60, 70-inch TVs up in those individual areas. And now we have a Google Drive documents spreadsheet that gets updated every single morning that ranks every single, parts advisor online or wholesale and shows where they are for the month in sales and where they're pacing, what the goal of that department is and how they're pacing towards the goal. So it's a mindset change and it's been great for us.
That sounds great. I don't hear very many departments doing that, so I think that's great. What about you, Mike? What are some things that you're doing with your parts managers that might be different than other dealerships?
We made them business owners. They own their business. They look for obsolescence. They look for untangible inventory that ties up the dealer's money. They're actually in business now, and then we get them the technical support out there. We use PartsEdge, and we've used PartsEdge for a number of years, and I will tell you that was probably the smartest thing that we'd ever did, because now I free up the managers to work on the business so that they grow the business. And we've seen some of the things that I think we have some of the best parts managers out there. But they were getting tied up in stuff that they couldn't be progressive at. So to Justin's point, we measure everybody every single day. They know what their sales are. They know we look at the wholesale end of the business. We look at the back end of the business. And then we look over the counter. No one really talks about the counter, but that's those customers that are coming back. That's because they want to come back, because we're not always out on the boulevard where they can go to get whatever they're needing really easy. So we've really progressed, and it's kind of fun. You've seen that people have come out of their shells, and they're actually, I think Scott was saying they didn't see themselves as salespeople. We're teaching them to be salespeople. Hey, you got a water pump. With that water pump, you also need to have 3 gallons of coolant for that particular vehicle. You need to have a gasket. Is there anything else that you should have that we haven't talked about? And they're selling 1 or 2 more items per invoice. It's just fun to see the transition from being an order taker to actually somebody that owns that task and closes the deal.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And Holden, so I wanted to bring up something too, because you were in the parts management role and then you transitioned to the fixed ops. And I think that happens a lot with dealerships. How was that transition going as a parts manager to fixed ops? Was it hard for you to kind of let go? Because parts managers typically their inventory, that's their baby. And so was that hard to kind of transition, or how was that for you?
It wasn't. I mean, I was a service advisor before I was a parts man, so
Okay.
as far as that, it wasn't too bad. And if anything, it was super beneficial to our business, because we essentially had a fixed ops director that was just a service manager. So whenever there was a special happening, parts got they just got the discount, and service got to keep their amount. So now that's a much more beneficial relationship, where when we're running specials, when we're doing things like that, planning business. We both, me and the parts manager, sit down, we talk about things, and I'll cut labor, he'll cut part, we'll do whatever we need to do, but it's mutual beneficial. Whereas before it was kind of just pass that on to parts, they're making enough money, things like that. So I think that's been one of the biggest things. And there's always those walls sometimes you got to break down between parts and service. Parts is mad at the advisors because of this, and then the advisors mad at parts because of that. So it's just having, two leaders in-house that have worked together in the past and are still continuing to work together and have a great relationship. I think that's one of the keys there, because at the end of the day, you got to have both to make the whole thing work. We need parts to fix the cars. They need us to sell the jobs. And it's just getting everyone on board that, hey, we're all working towards the same goal ultimately. And if service is doing good, that means the parts guys' paychecks are doing good, and vice versa. So I think that's one of the biggest things for me, was just being able to know what it's like on both sides of that wall and find ways where we can come together and make things work. And being a fixed ops director that looks out for parts, that gets parts, increases on warranty and things like that traditionally we had never even done before. So it's just been super beneficial, I think, to have that synergy working together.
I think so. Because I think that actually a lot of fixed ops comes from service, so they don't have that both sides of being in both shoes. So I think that fixed ops directors should visit with parts more to really see the day to day if they haven't been in parts, so that everyone can work and each side is benefiting, and not just one. I think that's kind of what you're saying you guys accomplished. So I want to transition into the inventory and the parts inventory. And, lately I've been comparing the parts inventory to used car inventory, and a parts manager, that's their job, to manage all of the moving parts in the inventory, making sure that service has the right parts. Is there anything that you guys are looking at specifically to have better control over your inventory, or are there things that you guys are doing that maybe other dealerships aren't thinking about? Scott, we'll start with you.
We look at everything. I mean, somebody said if it can be measured, we're measuring it, and I think that's what we do. And I put that information on a regular basis in front of our parts managers and in front of our general managers. Particularly our general managers that really wouldn't have the time or maybe know where to go get that information or really know how the parts department is performing. So, we measure obsolescence on a every month basis, and we compare our stores, and we have guidelines in place. So we're looking at 7 to 12 months and 12 months and over, and new parts with no sales. And we know what those numbers look like and what we think is a good job. And we have some stores that perform really, really good, and we have some stores that are tougher. And we work with those stores that are, that maybe have some opportunities to help them kind of clean that piece up. A lot of it has to do with just managing the daily process, right? So, when you're talking about obsolescence, we spend a lot of time watching our special order process. We have a written special order process that's in place for the parts department and the service department, whether it's coming over the counter or it's coming from the drive. And we report on that every single week. So, we know what percentage of our special order parts have appointments tagged to them. Again, there's a goal set, and we measure the entire group against that goal. And then we take it a step further and look at the appointments plus open repair orders and have a goal for that too. So, and we watch our aging on our SORs. How many SORs are in stock that are greater than 14 days, and report on that. So we try and put all the information in front of the managers. So number one, they don't have to go dig for it. I'm putting it in front of them. But also, like I said, back to the guys that are running the stores, the GMs and stuff like that, so that they really have maybe a better understanding of what's going on in their parts department, what's happening with that investment, and whether we're doing a good job managing it.
Yeah, so there was two important things I got out of that. Is you have the GMs involved, which I think is great, because most GMs don't come from parts and they don't really know. And by getting them involved, it gets everyone just on the same page to know where the numbers are at and how they can improve. And then the other thing is, you talked about special order process, and everyone always talks about obsolescence and wanting to get rid of it. But by you bringing up special orders, that's how you guys are, seeing the trickle down effect or the domino effect of obsolescence.
That's where obsolescence starts. I mean, the biggest driver of obsolescence is an uninstalled special order part that you don't stock, right? Yeah. So if we can get our arms around that and we can do a better job and eliminate it up front, they don't drop into those buckets we were talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And you're staying proactive by looking at
Right.
all those categories. That's yeah. Holden, what about you guys?
For me right now, it's our manufacturer is making us order. You know, we're getting force fed our orders and things like that. And we just recently put together a pretty large wholesale account with 40 rooftops that we're going to be servicing. So it's kind of going to be watching our inventory, seeing how much they're going to. I've already been on the horn with the manufacturer, like, hey, listen, I know we got this big account. We're going to have some parts rolling in. I'm going to need some flexibility on what you're forcing me to stock, what you're forcing me to take, because I only have so much warehouse space as it is. And a lot of this is body shop rooftops. So that's been my biggest thing. And that's where PartsEdge has been pretty helpful with just giving us the reporting, the tools we need so we can see, and then we can actually run reports for, that specific account, figure out what kind of parts we're seeing and things like that. That's my biggest focus the past month has been number one, setting up this account, making sure it runs smoothly. And then number two, watching inventory, because I know how they like to start sneaking stuff in on you. And like I said, I only have so much room and I just don't need a lot of body parts and things like that. So that's been huge for me. And that's just another one of those things, getting our GM involved on that and letting them know, like, hey, you're going to see parts inventory starting to creep up, because he always has his eye on that every month. So just go ahead and give him warning, like, hey, here's what we put together, and just keeping him in the loop. And he's excited about it because it's a pretty big opportunity for us to make a big name for ourselves. But at the same time, realizing, like, hey, there's going to be a little bit of growing pains initially, and it's just going to be working through that. So that's going to be a fun next few months for us.
Yes, definitely. That's exciting. And a lot of just like not getting in that mindset of like not setting it and leaving it, to constantly be reviewing so that that inventory doesn't get out of control.
Yeah.
Mike, what about you guys? Are there specific things that you guys like to look at for your inventory and all of that to better track everything?
Oh, we look at turns, we look at obsolescence, we look at SORs. I think that the area that we're really moving in, we're talking to the parts staff that service sells hours sells parts, and there's a big lift if we're working together to get those parts on the cars and cross the curb. So that's really it's kind of changed the way that we think. But we look at the obsolescence. If we tie up the dealer's capital and we don't have the ability to have the parts on hand that we need to service those customers until we liquidate it, and if you're lucky, you're liquidating 25, 50 cents on the dollar. And to me, that's just bad use of somebody's money. So we really have tightened it down. We talk about 90 days. We talk about 60, 120 days. We talk about 6 months. We talk about 9 months, and then we get into the 12 months. Why is it over 12 months? What do we have in inventory over 12 months? And so we start measuring that. I think everybody here has talked about measuring and what you need to make everybody aware of so that they make good decisions when they buy inventory. We look at how many turns. If it doesn't have so many turns in a 90-day period of time, how many do we have on hand? And then the shortages now has really kind of screwed things up, because you don't know what you need to inventory, because you don't know what's going to be available today or what's going to be available tomorrow. So we've kind of taken some leaps of faith in certain areas, and so far it's paid off. But that dynamic is changing every single day. So you have to look at the numbers daily.
Yes.
What Scott said, you put the information out there so everybody can see it, and you just move that inventory. And we have some large inventories in some of our stores, and we turn that pretty rapidly. And I feel really good that we've got the right processes in place to do that.
Justin, is there anything that you wanted to add additionally to that you guys may be looking at that they didn't already mention, or?
Not really. I mean, as the dealer principal, I mainly look at the total inventory and then all the cash that's tied up, and make sure it's not growing too rapidly or, growing faster than our sales pace. Yeah, it's a daily battle with the manufacturer and what they're wanting to send us.
So every time I said something about tying up the dealer's inventory, Justin's eyes got.
Well, I just had to go lease space at the building next door because I was out of space for inventory.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
It's great that we have such a great mix with this panel, being a parts director, fixed ops, and then a dealer, all the different perspectives. But it seems to boil down to just putting the numbers out there to track so that, you guys can make better decisions is really what it boils down to.
Definitely.
It's a lot of it.
A lot of it, all of it, pretty much. Oh, and process. Right, we talked about process. That's important. And what was the other thing with making everyone one? It's not separate. Parts and service is one.
That's right.
Yeah.
Kaylee, in many ways, you have the parts department of the future here. You've got 4 leaders who all have come up through parts, the dealer principal. You've got a corporate parts director who oversees many, many rooftops, 2 fixed ops directors, and you're hearing some things that we did not hear about years ago. And it sounds, to me, listening to Justin, Scott, Mike, and Holden, they're saying, bring it on. You're setting the pace, this group here, and it's very refreshing to hear this conversation at any event, let alone a fixed ops event. Really some remarkable stuff. And Justin, I want to compliment you because coming up through Justin, I can count them on one hand, maybe 2, the dealer principals who've come up with your type of background, your experience, Justin.
Thank you.
Yeah, all true. So, amazing work that you're doing. And Mike Walden, I've had a chance to spend time at your locations. Hansel is head and shoulders above the competition and what you do with that parts operation there.
Thank you.
Yeah, all true. And Scott, your mindset. Kaylee, how'd you like that about the running it like a sales department with the meetings and the huddles and doing that? Scott, you mentioned that every day, right? You do that
every day at 7:45.
That's so awesome.
Holden, it kind of sounds like Holden Scott over at Regal Nissan. Holden.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's all about teamwork. That's what it all boils down to.
And Holden, I'm a big admirer of your work because it's very important, the mindset. You always talk about that, making sure your team has the right mindset and your people. And it goes back to when you worked in some of those positions and not maybe having the type of leaders that you needed at that time, and you wanting and being that person today. So great job, everybody. Kaylee, what do you think?
I think this is great. We got into more of the parts. We talk about parts, but this was awesome. I really enjoyed this.
So everybody, thank you for getting us ready for 2023. Here we are, mid-November. Holidays are right ahead. Kaylee, if our audience wants to get a hold of you and learn more about PartsEdge and what you do, how do we do that?
You can go on our website, partsedge.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just reach out, and I'm here to help you.
Great. I want to thank Scott Traub, Holden Scott, Justin Aiken, Mike Walden. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you and your families, and Kelly Filio, you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Everybody, this is the most proactive parts management leadership panel here today at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.